Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Do you ever get distraught? Do you ever get upset? Of course, we all do. And in the idea of relationship building, what happens? Do you lash out at people? Do you call people names? Do you turn your back on people? Unfortunately, this is all too common, and it's very destructive of relationships. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce back again from our show last week. This is part 2 with Carmen Rivera, and she is an expert on emotional intelligence, what it is and how we can get it, because most of us are emotional morons. Wouldn't you say, Carmen?
Yes. That's a good way of putting it. Right. So when we look at emotional intelligence, and by the way, that word is recent. It's only been around since 1985. One considers that recent. But it's been popularized basically in the last 10, 15 years. And Daniel Goleman is the one who has popularized it. And when we look at emotional intelligence, we're looking really at a cluster of skills and competencies that allow us to have effective conversations and which lead to effective relationships. And so emotional intelligence in a nutshell is being aware of your feelings, being aware of your emotions, being able to manage those emotions in a way that is supportive of your relationship or your conversation, and then also being aware of the emotions of the person or persons you're speaking with. And then the fourth competency component is then being able to have relationships that work. So if we are aware of ourselves and we can manage our emotions, we're aware of the emotions in others, then we can manage the relationships in a way that are supportive, effective, loving, and long-lasting in a positive way.
It sounds so wonderful, Carmen, and yet I in one way I was joking about emotional morons, but that really, I would say that the majority of people are not very emotionally intelligent.
Well, it's one of the reasons that people are not is because we're hardwired. Our brains are wired to feel before we think.
Oh, okay.
So an event happens, and we react to it. It's the more primitive part of our brain reacts to that, and we look at it in nanoseconds of either we flee or we fight. And so we still have the same brain of centuries, eons ago, when we were not as well developed socially, and so and it's the same brain now. So you may have somebody calls you a name, or cuts you in line, or does something that disrupts your flow. Well, we decide, well, that person is impeding in getting in my way. So we lash out because our very, what is called reptilian brain, doesn't know to think about consequences. It just reacts. So we are hardwired to react. We have to learn to be able to put a little pin or a stop on that. Think, this doesn't take very long. It just takes practice to do it, though. Think, what should I do here with this emotion that will be socially and psychologically accepted in this context in which I'm having this emotion?
Yes, and as not Daniel Goldman, but the Steve Covey talks
Stephen
about
Covey.
Pushing the internal pause button and just giving yourself a little time and space. So, Carmen, I want to ask about something else, which is if somebody is lashing out at you, and you know there are consequences, yet the belief is that if I don't react tit for tat and lash back at you, then I am weak, I am a doormat.
Yeah, this is because this happens because we take everything personally. I mentioned last week that we think of ourselves as the center of the universe. The world revolves around us. We're the star of our own show and our own story. So if someone lashes at us, they may just be having a bad day. Maybe they have low blood sugar. Maybe their cat got ill that, they had to take him to the vet. We don't know what's going on in their lives and why they're in short fuse. So we take it personally and we feel that we have to lash out, not only because they're doing something to us and our ego gets involved, but also we see it as an act of, like you said, not inferiority, of weakness if we do not respond in kind.
Right. So if someone lashes out at you and you want to be emotionally intelligent, what do you do?
Well, first of all, you recognize that you're, this is the whole little stuff. You recognize where you are, what you are feeling, where your body are you feeling it? Because that's a physiological change in your body. Your heart rate may go up, your throat may get tight. Everybody has a slightly different way that the event is interpreted by their body. So notice where that is happening. Then decide, okay, this has nothing to do with me. This has something more to do with them. So you can still feel the emotion. Maybe you feel angry or irritated or frustrated. Acknowledge the emotion. The emotion is the feeling, the physiological feeling, with a thought attached to it that labels that feeling. So the emotion is both cognitive and physiological. So as the person identifies the emotion, that's a self-awareness. You've got to have self-awareness so that you recognize the emotion. As you recognize the emotion, I'm frustrated, you can then manage. You can, the second skill or the second competency in emotional intelligence is recognizing. You go, okay, I can lash out. I can call the person a name. I could hit them. I could throw something at them. Whatever. But recognize that that's not appropriate. So you may just say, I'm getting frustrated, and you may let the person say, I did not appreciate that comment to me. You use your words, like you tell 3-year-olds, use your words, don't throw things at your friend. So you use your words, I'm frustrated, I did not appreciate that. Or you can say, I am sorry you're having a bad day, I didn't mean to cut you off. Or go ahead, cut in line. Obviously you're in a more hurry than I am, and I don't mind. We can choose how to see the event in a way that does not cause more damage to us or the other person. It's a choice. Emotional intelligence is about coming from choice instead of coming from automatic pilot.
Right. And to, as you say, to pause, think, and choose. And so if you act in a certain way that someone else feels insulted, and you had no intention to insult them. So what would you say? I didn't mean to insult you? I would apologize. If you really did harm to someone by insulting or whatever, and you were unawares, you can say, my intention was not to insult you or to put you off or whatever the other person said. My intention was to do X. I apologize. And that's it. Now, the person can still rant, and you can say, I apologize. Is there anything else you need from me? Because sometimes people just like to just rant, and they don't really need anything from anybody else. And you just give them the space, and you would say, okay. So, and then you kind of say thank you or goodbye, and you walk away. You don't have to stay and let somebody continue with the ranting, or you can be patient and let them rant and then decide to leave the conversation. The idea behind this is that instead of you following somebody's ineffective behavior or emotional outburst,
you lead by showing the example of what's positive in that situation. And we talk about this in leadership all the time. Leaders, one of the major tenets of leadership is to set the example. You know, and yet leaders don't know what that means. They think of it only in task. Well, I'm setting the example by working harder, or I set the example by staying late. Yes, that is part of it, but it also is how you treat your employees and how you deal with stress also sets the example. You know, so it really, so the emotional intelligence has those 4 competencies, and each one is very needs a lot of practice. And it is something, you cannot have excellent relationships unless you become aware of who you are and how you think, how you behave, and the impact you have on others. So self-awareness is a biggie.
Right, and what we talked about in the last show, mindfulness, that you really need mindfulness to be emotionally intelligent.
Oh, yes, that is definite. You cannot be self-aware unless you are stop and look at your own behaviors or your own thoughts, your feelings.
Right.
And so having good relationships requires emotional intelligence. One of the things that one of the things that I tell people in my classes is people interview for jobs, and they get interviewed by the prospective employer, and the employee looks at the resume and asks questions about the skills to do the task or the job, and then they decide, okay, I'm going to hire this person, so that intellectual intelligence or quotient got you in the door. But then it's how you interact with other people, how you motivate, how you empathize, how you connect with the others that keeps you in the door.
Right.
And employers interview people, and so they interview employees, but then when they hire them, people show up. People with full-fledged things.
Real-life people, huh?
Real-life people, not just the resume, you know?
Right.
Not just that skill set. They come with all of their baggage.
Yes. Wow, that's well put. With baggage and not just a skill set.
Right. So emotional intelligence is necessary for managers and managerial leaders, employees, everyone in a workplace, as well as in a marriage, in a relationship, to be able to connect with the other person. Because if you're always getting angry or wanting control or, you know, whatever it is, exploding, after a while the other person's just not going to hang around with you.
Right.
You know.
Right. No, who wants that?
Yeah, you know, people don't like to hang around with people who make them feel bad. People like to hang around people who make them feel good.
Absolutely. And what you had said earlier about if someone's lashing out and to apologize and say, you know, is there anything else that you need from me? That is really, really taking the higher ground, isn't it?
Yes. You know, you are leading. Let them follow you instead of you being reactive and following their behavior, which is not productive.
Right, right. And there's a controversy over apologizing. You know, in assertiveness training, they will tell you, you know, don't apologize, and if for saying no. And I personally think it's appropriate to apologize. It's just not over apologizing.
Right, and there's different kinds of apologies. First of all, a lot of what people talk about when they apologize is they apologize for just breathing. They apologize for existing. I'm sorry, but I have had to ask a question. So they're in a meeting and they apologize for speaking up. That's the kind of apology assertiveness training wants you to not do.
Right.
You don't apologize for just asking a question or breathing or being there. That's your right. What we want to apologize is when we consciously or unconsciously cause harm.
Right.
That's the apology is necessary. People appreciate it. They may not even want restitution. They just want to know that you care.
Right.
That you notice that you did something that hurt them in some way.
Right. even if it wasn't your intention.
Exactly.
And this is where the debate is, because when you say, I'm sorry, people say, oh, you don't have to be sorry, you didn't do it. And I will say,